Hello, believers, non believers, and everyone in between. You're listening to Stories with Sapphire. I am Sapphire Sandalo. Now get cozy and open your mind because it's story time. The House That Broke Us, submitted by Michael. I was born 10 and a half weeks premature. I weighed only 2 pounds, 3 ounces. It was 1977, and the new neonatal care unit had just opened 3 weeks prior to my birth. My mother had preeclampsia and was put into a medically induced coma. She was only 17. My grandmother arranged for her to have last rites and for my twin and I to be baptized. The doctors believed none of us would make it. My brother was 3 pounds, but had major health complications, and I just couldn't seem to gain weight. My heart had issues too. To say it was a long road is an understatement. But we made it, and I came home a week after my brother on our due date in March. I share all of this because I believe being so close to the other side at birth and into later life caused me to live a life walking the line between the two. When we were almost a year old, my mother found herself expecting again, and her father made her get married this time. Her new husband had a good-paying factory job, and they found a lovely 2-story saltbox-style home just a few miles away from both their families in rural southwest Wisconsin. The house had a history that was only discovered later. Every family who lived in that house suffered tragedy. Every family either went bankrupt, got divorced, or suffered a suicide. But my mom and her new husband were blissfully unaware of any of these things and decided to give this marriage their best shot. Mom worked the night shift at a cheese factory, how Wisconsin can you get, and took care of my brothers and I during the day. She told me that she noticed little things happening around the house, but nothing alarming or that couldn't be explained away. All the bedrooms were painted different colors, and the purple room gave her the creeps, so she refused to use it. Not even for storage. The second floor and yard are where all of my experiences occurred. We lived in a corner lot on a dead-end street. There were kids on every corner. This was the early 80s, and there was an unwritten law that children spent summer days outside. The moms all took turns serving Kool-Aid, lunch, and snacks as we wandered as a pack up and down the block. We were only called inside for naps and dinner. But our yard was a favorite spot. It had a swing set, raspberry bushes, butted up against a woodworking shop, and the owner would let us watch him work in exchange for small chores like sweeping. What all of us loved best about our house were the puppet shows in the basement window. We would sit around our basement window around 3 p.m. every day and watch an old-fashioned puppet show. The style reminded me of Lady Elaine from Mr. Rogers, and while she terrified me, it somehow made these puppets okay. This paradise existence didn't last long. One rainy morning, we were stuck inside, which meant reruns of Bewitched. 3 basic channels meant few options. It was an episode where Tabitha watches a puppet show. They were the same puppets we had been watching. I got so excited. I said, "Mommy, it's Punch and Judy." I remember my mom looking at me oddly. She then asked, "Where did you see Punch and Judy? No one does these shows anymore." I told her calmly as I turned back to the TV that the people in the basement showed us them. My mom had my stepdad search the basement when he got home, but he found nothing. Our carefree summer ended. We were no longer allowed in the backyard. This is when my night terrors started. I would scream and walk in my sleep. Several nights, my mom found me walking along the 1-inch wide headboard to my new canopy bed. She said my eyes were wide open and I would scream, a blood-curdling scream that set her teeth on edge. Please remember, my mother was working from 6 until 2 a.m. She would just get settled to sleep when I would start screaming at 3 a.m. every night. My brothers would be up by 6. She was only sleeping 2 hours a night. To say she was exhausted is an understatement. What neither of them knew was that my terror started long before 3 a.m. To help her get more sleep, my mom put us all in one room. She then installed an eye hook lock on the outside so we would stay put just a little longer in the mornings. As a parent now myself, I can't imagine making this decision. I asked her about it once, and she said she was just so tired, and it was either that or she would snap and hurt us. And so this was the safest of the two options. She knew our bedroom was safe, and if it bought her just 30 minutes, any little bit helped keep her sane. Before she did this, she had overslept and had come downstairs to me, age 3, cooking breakfast for my brothers at the gas stove. So I think she did the best thing her 20-year-old brain could come up with. But this was just the beginning of the end, as activity began to escalate. As I stated earlier, bedtime brought on its own challenges. I was happy to have my brothers with me, but it brought little comfort when the old lady with a witch face would hover outside our bedroom window. Her face would press against the window. She would beg and beg to be let inside. But I knew better than that. I would cover my head until I fell asleep. This happened every night. I thought I was the only one who saw her, heard her pleading with me to be let inside. But when we were 15, my brother and I were reminiscing. He was so excited to know I saw her too. But what he didn't know was that that wasn't the only time I saw her. One day, as I stood at the top of the stairs opposite the attic door, I saw her again. This time, it was all of her, dressed in black, white hair flowing wildly around her head. She opened the attic door and floated out. Her hair and clothes seemed caught in a breeze that wasn't possible as no windows were open. She put a finger to her lips, silently telling me to be quiet. She then beckoned to me to join her. I stood, frozen, not sure what to do. I just got on my butt and scooted down the stairs. I was so tiny for my age, I still hadn't mastered getting up and down them. I never said a word, but I never saw her again, not like that. Meanwhile, my parents started experiencing things themselves, all of which started to erode their already tenuous marriage. My mom's lack of sleep started affecting her decisions, and my stepfather's personality started to change. He became obsessed with money and would not let my mom quit her job, even though 100% of her paycheck went straight into a savings account. She started going out for breakfast with girls from work to avoid seeing him at all. One night, she came home to him sitting in a chair in front of the door with a bat in his hand. He calmly asked her if she had been home earlier. She said no. He then walked her into the kitchen where every drawer and cabinet was open. He said he woke up to banging noises and thought she had brought the girls home for breakfast. He had gone down to tell her to keep it down when he found the kitchen like this. But not only that, the water was running full force, not just in the kitchen, but in the bathroom. Both the sink and the shower were running. He had given us our bedtime baths, so he couldn't figure out why the shower would be running, as one has to pull the plug up in order to turn it on. They couldn't figure it out. Just like the rocking chair they started hearing nightly from the attic, or the fact a young driver accidentally forgot to put her car in park and it ran straight into our garage at full speed. Or that a forklift knocked hundreds of pounds of cheese over and on to my mother, leaving her with whiplash and a lower back injury that made it impossible to work at age 21. By the summer I was 4, the stress became too much for them. and they decided to sell the house and get divorced. My stepfather took all the money my mom had put away and took a month-long trip to Switzerland, leaving her broke and unable to care for 3 small children. He was awarded custody of our little brother and was never the same man my mom married. That is a whole other story. And the house wasn't done with me yet. As my mom packed up the house, she narrowed down and shut up rooms. My bedroom was one of the last to be packed up, as my twin brother and I needed a place to sleep. We were supposed to be taking a nap. I could hear my mom talking on the phone. I have no memory of walking out of my room with my brother, but we were standing outside the purple room, a room we were never allowed in and was always locked. Not that it mattered. We were too small to reach the door handle. We barely weighed 20 pounds. But this day, the door opened. I will never forget what we saw inside. Things that no 4-year-old child should ever see. The lavender walls were splattered with blood, so much blood it was running down them. Littering the floor were mangled, dismembered body parts, but they weren't still. They creeped and shuddered on the floor until one arm raised off of the floor and started beckoning us to come inside. We still hadn't crossed the threshold. We stood there in shock, frozen in fear. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a voice roared, "No!" So loud it seemed to shake the whole house. And just like that, the door slammed shut, and we were back in our room. I could still hear my mom talking on the phone. My brother and I never said a word to each other, not for many years. Both of us thought it was a dream, until we were 15 and finally started talking about life in that house. Our last week was especially traumatic for me. Every morning, I was awoken to a crow in my room. Every morning, my mom's new boyfriend would take the crow outside, but it always found a way back in. No one knows how. No windows, no obvious port of entry. After 3 days, he killed it with a broom, only to have another take its place every morning until we finally left. Sapphire, these are just the beginnings of my experiences. Spirits have followed me all of my life and have affected the lives of my children. I'm not sure why or how I was chosen, but I will make the most of it. Thank you for creating a safe space for people like me to share their stories. It is so hard when the world tells you that ghosts aren't real and you must be crazy. Thanks for joining me today. And did you know that I offer bone and tarot readings? You can schedule a session at StoriesWithSapphire.com. Salamat and good night.